Welcome to this episode of the Gunman. So this video here, I'll be teaching you guys how to carry out repairs on fiberglass parts. So as you can see here, we've got a Nissan Skyline bumper bar. The owner's obviously hit something with it and cracked the bumper bar up. Not uncommon. And I'll be teaching you guys start to finish how to carry out the repair, do the filler work, and also do the primer work. I'll be skipping out the paintwork stage in this video because the owner actually didn't even want it painted. He's going to give it a shot himself. So we'll start off obviously by assessing the damage that you've got and making a plan for how you're going to go about it. This time I'm just grabbing straight away, just getting the 40 grit on the mini grinder and just grinding away, getting rid of any of those high spots. It wasn't too bad, this damage. I've seen much worse on fiberglass parts, but you'll be able to use exactly the same methods no matter what kind of repair, I would imagine. If you're sort of gluing two parts together, you may want to just get some tape or something. Well, I'll take you through all the fiberglassing stage later on. First up, we've got to get our prep work done. You want to make sure you're getting rid of any loose parts of the old fiberglass, any dirt and stuff that may have accumulated inside the crack over time. This is going to aid with your adhesion. Unfortunately, on this bumper bar, whoever painted it the previous time didn't really do that good of a job on their prep work, and I was actually encountering lots of splits and cracks and flaking paint, so that repair got a little bit bigger than what it probably really needed to be, but not to worry, we were able to fix it up with a bit of filler just on that edge. So this part down the bottom here, there was a split. It wasn't even part of the job. I just decided to do it while I had all the stuff out. The owner really only showed me that main section on the front of it. Again, on the inside, you want to reinforce it all from the inside too. When you've got a split in your fiberglass, you want to do inside and outside of that part. Same process, just removing any dirt and stuff that may be on there and etching into it, or grinding into it to give something for your fiberglass to stick to. So this is a fiberglass resin that I'm using. It's a polyester resin, and I'm just using a chop mat. Now there's loads and loads of different types of resins on the market, and the mats as well. If you're unsure of which one to get, if you're doing this kind of work, I'd just go for your polyester. You could use an epoxy one and a different kind of matting if you're doing more structural type work, but in that case I would probably recommend that you would get some professional training. I'm not a professional fiberglass man. I'm not a boat builder or anything like that. However, I do know the process. I've actually only learnt how to do this in the last year myself, while my business partner showed me, and it really is quite a simple process. It's not that complicated. The pointers that I've been given is not to put too much resin in. I've seen some guys and they just absolutely fill the entire inside of a bumper bar up with resin and not even put any mat in there, but that's not the correct way to do it. You're doing a couple of things. You're putting extra weight in your car really that you don't need in there, and you're not actually giving it the strength of this chop mat or the matting. Anyway, next up we're going to be moving on to mixing it up. So they will vary, the ratios of hardener to resin. This one here runs about 1%, it said. One of the previous ones that we got just from the hardware store, that was 2.5%. So just read the can, see what it says, and the catalyst is in a little bottle, and then you will just be able to zero the scales back out. So I go 100 mils of resin, and then I think I went a little bit over with the hardener, so 1.5. It's not really going to be a deal breaker if you go just a touch over with the hardener. I wouldn't want to go any less than the recommended amount, but obviously drying times also going to vary on the day, so you probably notice that I've brought it out into the sunlight, which aided it drying up too. So make sure you wear your PPE obviously when you're doing this kind of work. It's not good, it's quite smelly stuff and it's not good for you. Wear your gloves, long sleeves if you want, to keep some of that fiberglass dusty stuff off you, and especially wear your respirator when you're doing this. So yeah, we've obviously blown all this off so there's no dust on there, which is going to contaminate our resin, and then just brush on a nice thin layer. You don't want too much on there from what I've been told, as I was mentioning before. Just get a nice even amount over there, and then we'll go and place our matting over the top of that. And then after that, we'll just put a little bit more over the top of the matting and allow it to dry. It's really that simple. If you can layer it up as well. So if you think that you want a little bit more strength in there, you can do it, then leave it, say 5 or so hours so it's dried up depending, and then put some more on there and then leave it for say 24 hours. You'd say 99% of the time it'll be fully cured. In this instance, I just left it for say 3 or 4 hours and it was dry enough for me to sand into and carry out my filler repairs, which I'll take you through in a minute. So as you can see, these are the patches that I cut up earlier and just placing them in. I've sped the video speed up here, otherwise the vid was going to get a little bit too long. And again, we're just putting this resin over the top of it. It really is a very simple process, as I say before, but if you don't know it, you don't know it. I would have definitely benefited from this video a year ago, but I hope this can help other people understand the process. I've recently had a good friend of mine, my YouTube mentor. If it wasn't for this guy, I wouldn't have even made this YouTube channel. But what happened to him is he had a nice Monaro, one of the newer Monaros, VZ Monaro I think it was, and he's accidentally reversed into a pole. He had a fiberglass rear bumper bar on it. He's then taken it to a shop to get it repaired. They've charged him $350 to do a repair that really wasn't much bigger than this. And then he's taken it to a paint shop, and then they've said, oh, sorry, but we can't paint it, it's gone too far. And he ended up costing him over $2,000 because they ended up telling him he had to buy a brand new genuine bar, which was pretty poor considering how easy it is to repair fiberglass. As you can see here, your filler works easy. It's not a hard job at all. This job here, I only charged the customer $150. And look, it only took me all of 2 hours from start to finish this job. Yes, we didn't paint it. Obviously, I'm not including my curing times, but actual work that I spent on it, it really didn't take that long. It's not hard work at all. And it's quite a simple process once you know how to do it. I guess anything is easy once you've had a bit of practice at it, and you're only going to get better in time. So yeah, you can get these kind of fiberglass kits from your local DIY hardware store type thing. However, if you're in the industry, or you think you're going to be doing a little bit more fiberglassing, I do recommend trying to get onto a fiberglass resin company. You'll probably find them around most capital cities. We got onto one called Fiberglass Resin Sales. It's here in Perth, and they charge well under half the price for the exact same as what you'll get from your hardware store. So keep that in mind if you guys are looking for some fiberglass and resin. Also, those kind of shops are going to be able to give you a little bit more help on the job as well. So they'll be able to point you in the right direction with exactly which resin you'll need and which matting and stuff like that. Whereas if you go to a hardware store, you've probably got someone that really doesn't know much about the product. But anyway, I've left that bumper bar in the sun for a few hours and then came back to it. I flipped it up so we got, you know, a bit of heat on the inside and the outside, and then brought it back inside, and I've thrown a bit of 80 grit onto this orbital sander. The sander I'm using is a 3M orbital sander, and it's got a 5mm orbit on it, so it's perfect for doing repairs. It's a nice quick one too. And it's also good enough to do paintwork with. And as you may have noticed, I'm using a soft interface pad on it. That can help stop squaring off some of those lines. So where you've got those curves and stuff like that, if you use it without the interface pad, you can sometimes make it look like a bit of a 50-cent piece. My Australian followers know exactly what I mean there. So yeah, there was a couple of bits that were a little bit too high still, so I ended up deciding I had to get that grinder back out to grind it back down. And same with on this bottom bit here, I just decided to grind it back down. On the inside, I didn't do any grinding at all. There's no need for it. You're able to just leave it without grinding it at all, unless you decided that you wanted to go and put another further layer, as I was mentioning earlier. Then you may want to give it a bit of a grind back to give yourself something to stick to again. Once I've got the rest of that grinded back down, I'll be going back over the top of that then with the 80 grit again, and just removing any of those rough edges that you'll be left behind from the 40 grit on that little grinder there. There are actually a couple of other options that you can do when using fiberglass. They've got some pretty good fiberglass fillers on the market, and this is one here, the U-Pole Fibril. This stuff is great. I probably just about could have used that on this job here. It wasn't that bad, but as much as anything, I thought I'll do the job properly for the owner and I'd be able to make a video and show you guys how to do it. Anyway, next up we're mixing up our body filler. So this is known as in America as Bondo or Australia as Bog. Either way, it's just lightweight body filler. Some of these body fillers are better than others. Some of them are real hard to sand and some of them are really nice to sand and they don't get left with too many pinholes. This is a good one. I'm pretty happy with it. It's reasonably priced and it sands down quite easily and it dries nice. So the amount of hardener that you're meant to put in, I think it's about 50:1 is technically the ratio. I've never in my whole life seen anyone actually measure that out though. You'll just get the hang of it. It won't take long. As you saw, you just put however much body filler you think you're gonna need and then just eye it up, and that's all I ever do. Drying times for this is obviously going to, again, depend on the weather, but it's going to take a lot less time than your fiberglass to dry. However, if you decided to use the fiberglass filler that I showed you before, you'll have similar drying times to your bog. I decided to leave the entire application process of this body filler in too, because I know it's something that some people may have a few troubles with, especially the DIY guys, the guys doing it at home, that, you know, this stuff, the nicer you get it in, the nicer it's going to sand out, and the less coats of this you're going to have to put in. It turned out this time I got it in perfect the first time, and I didn't have to reapply, so that's definitely always good when you get it in one. It's not always possible, and it's not something that you always get. Even the best painters and panel beaters are not able to get it right the first time always, but it's always good when you do. So you really don't want those edges in really thick. It's going to make it really hard to sand out, but you still want to obviously have enough in the low spot. What I'm doing down there on this spot exactly here, not really ideal, but I tried feathering that paint out. It just wouldn't take, it would not feather out. So I ended up just having to do my best and then fill up over that edge. And as it turned out, it'll be fine once he paints over it. And I just put a couple of coats of 1K primer over that once we get the repairs done. There you go, there it is. So you really want to focus on those edges, getting them in nice and neat, and obviously getting enough in. I ended up just grabbing the heat gun for about 5 or 10 minutes and just heating it up because I was just in the zone. I didn't feel like waiting around this time. I just wanted to get stuck into it and get the job done. So once I put the heat gun onto it, heated it up, I got the air line and then cooled it back down. That will actually also help with the drying process. If you want to force dry filler and stuff like that, go hot, cold, and don't try sanding it when it's too hot either. It'll just end up sticking up your sandpapers. So you want to sand it down when it's cool. So what I used there was just 80 grit on the orbital sander to start off with. Again, I was using the interface pad, and once I just took that top layer off, I've got this 3M Stick-It block is what it is, and they're designed to use with a sanding disc here. Perfect little block. They're flexible, they've got a bit of flex in them, so they'll move to the contours and they'll still actually be able to get a panel nice and straight. So just blocking over that with the 80 grit again, and then in a couple of minutes you'll see I'll be finishing it off with 180 grit. Before I prime it, I'll be sanding all my edges down with 320 grit. That's not a 100% rule of thumb that you have to do it exactly like this. I mean, if you wanted to use, say, 120 grit to sand these filler repairs down with, that would probably be fine. You go much finer than the 120 and you're really not going to be cutting into it to make it flat enough. And any coarser than the 80, so if you were to go 40 grit, you're going to be ripping into the original paint too much, and it's going to actually take a lot more time to get rid of those 40 grit scratches. So you'd want to be going sort of 80 to 120 for your filler repairs on something like this. And then for this stage here, 180, I think 180s are perfect for priming over. You could change that out for some 240. There are various ways of skinning a cat, as we all know. I have very specific methods that I like to do when I'm doing sanding. They've been finely tuned by over 15 years of trial and error, and I really do have a procedure that I like to stick to. Now, look, like any job, I guess, it is a procedure, spray painting. If you follow those steps correctly, well then you should have success. But either way, there are a few little ways that you can go about that. We're not doing it exactly the same. Look, I'm using a 320 grit soft pad. You could change that with a piece of Scotch-Brite. You'll probably get a similar effect. So I'm going around any of those shiny edges to allow my primer to stick. What I'm doing here, I've just grabbed the 80 grit back out because I noticed that in that groove there, I probably had a little bit too much filler, so I'm just sanding that back out. And obviously 80 grit's a bit coarse to want to go and prime over, so I'm going to be going back over that with a piece of 180 grit before I prime it. I've had a few people request these kind of videos, doing some repairs and filler work, and I think this is probably a good video because it goes right through repair, and I'll tell you right through the primer stage as well. And I'm just using, as I mentioned before, just a bit of 1K primer, nothing flash. Had I have had a batch of jobs that I was priming up in 2-pack, I probably would have just done it for him, but the deal was $150 just for the repair. We'd charge you an extra $50 if you want it properly 2-pack primed. He said, "No, don't worry about it, I'll prime and paint it." But I just thought, you know what, it's only going to take me 5 or 10 minutes to put a bit of primer on it, so I just ended up doing it for him. I'm not getting overly fussy with the masking here because it is just acrylic primer. If I was using 2-pack primer, I'd probably want to cover a bit more of the car up, and I wouldn't be doing it in the workshop as well. I'd be doing it in the spray booth, but acrylic primer really doesn't stick to anything. Basically, by the time it hits any overspray, it's going to be dry because it dries so quick, whereas the 2-pack will dry really hard and it'll stay wet for a lot longer. So again, just make sure you're always wearing your PPE when you're doing any stuff like this. So if you're spraying, just make sure you wear your respirator. At least wear a dust mask. It's not really ideal. But yeah, just a quick mask up here. I'm not getting too fussy with it. Just mainly just keeping the bulk of it off the shiny paint. I always like to use good quality masking tape. We use the 3M brand. I find that it's one of those things, trying to save a couple of bucks on the cheaper masking tapes, you end up just having a big headache and the tape rips and it doesn't stick, and you'll get it in the booth and then it'll start falling off once you've got a couple of coats of paint on. So just like anything, you get what you pay for in this world. But that's just about me for the masking. I'm pretty happy with that. It's nothing flash, but there we go. I've just got some 1K primer in this suction fed gun. We just leave the primer in there, just give it a stir up each time you use it, or else sometimes it'll just settle to the bottom and it won't like to spray. But there you go, just fairly low pressure, so I'm not getting it, not trying to cover everything in the workshop in this primer. Now you'll probably see a couple of pinholes, just minute air bubbles is all they are opening up once I get this primer on. I knew they were there prior to putting the primer on, but I really wasn't too fussed. I could have fixed them first if I wanted to, but I decided I'll just get the primer on. I left it overnight, and then I put a lightweight fine polyester filler in there, and then left that for say 10 or 20 minutes, and then just gave it a quick scuff down with some 320. So I actually ended up sanding the bumper bar down for the owner as well. He'll just probably give it a final check over and then do his paintwork. I actually put the owner onto my channel, so hopefully he's watching and he'll get to see the process that we went about fixing his bumper bar for him. So you may have noticed that the first coat of primer, I didn't put it on too heavy, just sort of a medium wet coat, and that's just gonna dry straight away. And then I just went and put a nice wet one on for the second coat, and just called it good at that. It's just about all it really needed. Depending on what you're looking for out of it, you can just continue to put another couple of coats on and then leave that, say, out in the sun for a couple of hours. You'd be able to sand it down. In this case, I left it overnight. Same thing with your fiberglass. It's probably good practice to do your fiberglassing and then just leave it overnight, forget about it. But I didn't do it in this case. I just wanted to get the job done, and I wanted to get home and make this video for you guys to all see. So I hope you guys have really enjoyed it. If you have, give the video a big thumbs up. Be sure to leave a comment below. Check out my website, thegunman.net.au. Now you've watched this video, get out there and paint some shit. Thanks for watching, and this has been another Gunman production.